I'm going to move on to our next agenda item, the state of the Senate, the state of the SSCCC Senate. So we're just going to be giving you a very brief update from all of our executives. So with that, I would like to invite all of the SSCCC vice presidents to come to the stage right now. And with that, when they come here, we'll introduce ourselves. But first off, I want to hand it over to Gerardo, our president, Gerardo Chavez. If you're online, are you here? VPs?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Floor is yours.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope that you are having a fantastic time getting empowered, getting informed on the great things that we're able to do and we're doing within our California Community College system. Within the Student Senate, we've done a lot of work on behalf of students. We carried on the resolutions that were passed in General Assembly of 2021, and that has been our guiding star. But the one thing that I do want to start with is the work that we've been doing with student empowerment. And we've have the ability to be able to visit colleges on campus. If you're here and we visited you, thank you so much for welcoming us and greeting us on your campus. It was a pleasure to be able to speak to you, meet you, and talk to your students. But the first item that we have here is the Student Forum series. And this really came from when we're talking to students, we failed and we neglected to realize that diversity that we have and the different conversations that we can have with different student populations and different topics. So that's something that we came up with. How about we have a forum for our students and we make it a series and we focus on different student populations, on different topics that we've never really amplified. So we decided to have forums for basic needs, non-traditional students, mental health, financial aid, non-credit courses, financial aid, student athletes, international students, and so many different other areas. We had the pleasure to join the Chancellor's office in our student listening tours, and we visited over 20 colleges. We visited 7 colleges with the Chancellor's office, but we decided to take a detour and do our own tours. And also, we did 9+1 rights trainings throughout the year. We were able to provide informational sessions, whether it was at conferences, whether it was going to our student body associations. But there are 2 different areas that I want to highlight that we were able to have breakthroughs. Student trustees and being able to provide that empowerment and that information to our student trustees. We cannot rely on our districts to be able to relay that information to our student trustees. So from the very beginning, we were able to provide that training. We were able to inform our student trustees on what is 9+1 rights, what is shared governance, where are the areas that you're able to enter and have a conversation. And the next one, which is a major breakthrough, something that we never saw before, is we're talking about accessibility that will break language barriers. So we provided a 9+1 training in Spanish, and we recognize there are many languages that are being spoken within our community college system, but this is just the beginning of being able to break through language barriers and be able to really have true accessibility for every student. This is something that we were able to really echo throughout each college, is that students shouldn't necessarily have to adjust to the English language. If we really want our students to succeed, we have to go to them and be able to provide in the language that they understand. So this is the work that we're doing within student empowerment. Next slide, please. System advocacy. So as you may recall yesterday at your 9+1 training, shared governance, we have that within the Student Senate. We work with the Chancellor's office. We work with the Academic Senate. And there are major breakthroughs that we were able to do on behalf of our students. And really it's because of that collaboration that we were able to have. The first one is pass or no pass. Regulatory changes that added more flexibility for students to transition to pass or no pass. And this is because within the pandemic, we saw students failing. We saw that our regulations weren't updated and really were ancient and didn't really respond to the crisis that was going on during the pandemic. So because of these regulatory changes, now students have the flexibility to be able to transition to pass or no pass all the way up to the last day of instruction. And before, you only had up to 30% of the class to be able to transition. Also, excuse withdrawal, adding pandemic into the list of the reasons why you have to request an excuse withdrawal option. And by saying the pandemic, we can say, I got sick, I missed too much classwork, I had to take care of a family member, and so on. So this is adding more flexibility to be able to allow for our students to succeed during these tough times. Then we have mental health awareness. So we have our Black Student Success Awareness Week coming up. We've had our Undocumented Student Week of Action. So we really push towards creating a week to raise awareness for mental health. And the Board of Governors approved a resolution, so that is in the works. So that is how we were able to use our partnership to be able to accomplish this. We advocated for regulations in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's something that our vice president is going to talk more in depth. But a lot of these changes are coming from our student plan of action, our anti-racism student plan of action, adding more diversity within curriculum, being more equitable in our faculty evaluations. And then the last one is we advocated for the Board of Governors to prioritize student housing accessibility. So we were able to get a lot of funding for our system to create affordable housing. But this is the area that we're able to say, okay, we're going to create housing for our students. Let's make sure that it's, first of all, affordable. It is equitably accessible, meaning that we're not just targeting one student population, but we're targeting all students, whether you're a traditional student or a non-traditional student. So this is the areas that we were able to advocate with our partners at the Chancellor's Office, Academic Senate, with our faculty members. Next slide, please. Resolutions from 2021. And this is just to preface that we received a lot of resolutions. And you probably were trained in our resolution process, but many of our resolutions are calling for different things for us to do, and they're assigned to committees. So these are the resolutions that were assigned to our executive committee, where myself and the executive committee and our staff, Dr. Adams, we were able to work on. And these are more tangible items that we were able to accomplish. Others are more abstract. They require either legislation, they require education code amendments, Title V regulation changes. But these are areas that we were able to address right away. And the other resolutions that were passed, we're still working on them. Just because the year passed doesn't mean that we forgot about them. All of our resolutions that are prioritized are an ongoing process. So the first one is Students with Disability Awareness. We partnered with the Chancellor's Office to host a webinar to increase awareness for accessibility for our students with disabilities. Creating curriculum, creating classrooms that are accessible for our students, they're equitable, they're inclusive. And this webinar actually occurred in February. Bolster participation in shared governance. So I know that many of our student governments are winging it with one or two student members. Sometimes you have 5 or 10. And what usually was given to 20 people to do within student government now is relying on 10 people. But we sent out a reminder that, hey, we still have shared governance that we have to take care of. So we co-authored a memo with the Chancellor's Office and with the Chief Student Services Officers Association. So if you don't know what CCSOs are, they're your Vice President of Student Services. They most likely oversee your student life. So we sent out a memo to the advisors, to the Deans of Student Life saying, hey, you have shared governance on your campus. Please make sure that your student government is appointing students and is actively engaging in those conversations. And you have a student in those shared governance. The third one, very exciting, ethnic studies. So a lot of the work that we're doing within diversity, equity, and inclusion is great. But if there's something that we have recognized is that we're not able to make systematic change unless we start teaching systematic change through ethnic studies and having a true understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we advocated for the Board of Governors to incorporate ethnic studies as a minimum requirement for associate's degree. So if you're going to a Cal State system, you know that you need ethnic studies in order to transfer to a Cal State. So now it's going to be a requirement for you to attain an associate's degree. And then the last one, minimum qualifications for advisors. And this is intersegmental work that we are really hoping that will transform the dynamics between student leaders and advisors. So we are forming a task force. We have formed a task force with advisors and students to develop effective practices for our student body associations, effective practices for our advisors, shifting that idea from advisors, stepping in for the student, but rather allowing for students to be in the driver's seat within student governments and allowing for advisors to advise our student leaders. So this is the work that we have been doing within the Student Senate. Now I will pass it on to our Vice President.
All right, thank you. Just really quickly, as you all know, my name is Angelica. I'm a student at City College of San Francisco, as well as the SSCCC Vice President. So my journey here in SSCCC this year didn't start as VP, so this is a bit weird. Actually was the Vice President of Communications, if any of you were at GA here last year. But in my time as Vice President, I myself and my committees have challenged ourselves to take action, to rise to the challenge, to address our anti-racism action plan. Sure, it's a document. It can come off as just a document with pretty words and pretty ideas. But I like to think that our work on affecting change and creating and drafting language for a more equitable student grievance process is that action to address the needs that we identified for students. So as per, again, our anti-racism action plan, the SSCCC is currently working on a more student-friendly, equitable, and understandable student grievance process model that we, again, hope is accessible and comprehensive to students. Because let's be real, looking at policies as a student, whether you're in your first year or in your second year or you're super involved, it's scary, it can be complex. There's a lot of legal language. So we're making sure that, there is also an effective conflict resolution process when it comes to grievances, whether they're standard, whether they're academic, or they're related to Title IX or Title V. So that work is still in progress, but it's so close to completion. So we're hoping to work with local college districts very soon to see if they can implement it on their campuses. Secondly, DEI curriculum. So the SSCCC is proudly supporting current proposed changes to DEI curriculum on our California Community College campuses, which aim to better bolster inclusivity and ensure that our classrooms have the accurate representation that we need. Also, I wanted to shout out the work that my colleague, Vice President of Regional Affairs, Jen Gallinado, helps work on and support, which is our Chapter 2 of the Anti-Racism Action Plan, focusing on anti-Asian hate. So next year, my hopes for next year is that whoever takes over my role, continues on taking actionable steps to ensure that Chapter 2 is not just statements and pretty words. There are actionable items that we can roll out in our community college system. So that, as you all know, was approved yesterday. And just to quickly wrap up our diversity and equity and inclusion work, is we, as the SSCCC, have an internal committee dedicated to DEI that focuses on, on the whole, oh my gosh. But we formed a committee this year on DEI, and now their main focus is, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ensuring that every space that we advocate in is diverse and taking into equity and taking into account inclusion. Secondly, the other part of my role as vice president is to handle work with our vice chairs, our region vice chairs, and the internal affairs of the SSCCC. So this year, region officers, for the very first time, so vice chairs, treasurers, communications officers, they all started to receive stipends. So in order to ensure that we are not just, that the money is being spent wisely and to fairly compensate our regional officers for all of the amazing and hard work they do every single day, we created a stipend, and we also created a regional accountability policy. And it's very similar to what we do for the board. And it's also just to make sure that those students are accountable, those student leaders in regions are accountable to each and every one of you in the work they do, whether it's in communications, whether it's as a treasurer, fundraising for your region, or if it's as a vice chair, when they support you, you as a delegate, when it comes to reports, when it comes to, attendance of committees. Secondly, the SSCCC established a set of professional guidelines. I was proud to be able to oversee that. And these professional guidelines for the SSCCC Board of Directors in our regions hopes to set a standard of professionalism in the work that we do, to highlight, integrity, competency, emotional intelligence, and honesty as ideals that we hold as members of the board, and when we represent all of you in the different spaces that we take up. Finally, we revised the SSCCC regional officer positions and board of director positions to include more intersectional collaboration and communication as a highlight of those new job descriptions. And finally, I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, VPRA Jen Galinato.
Oh, hold up, give me a second. I'm usually really good with mics, but I guess today is not my day. So thank you so much for that transition, VP Campos. So let's talk a little bit about what the Regional Affairs Committee has been doing in addition to all 10 of our Regional Affairs Directors and myself. So overseeing under the scope of the Regional Affairs Committee, we've actually accomplished pretty good things. And also I'd like to also know, similarly to VP Campos, I did not start in this position. I came on in October, and the board decided to keep me on in January, so bear with me as I give my report. So, the Regional Affairs Committee has been able to hold 2 officer summits. Actually, one of them was held here in person for the very first time out of the 4 times that we've had it, and one was in fall, the other was in spring. So for those of you who were able to join us in person, I'm giving a quick shout out to Taft and Moorpark Colleges from Region 6 for joining us there. And it was open to the public, so if you want to get more information about how that looked, feel free to reach out to me later. And also, we developed trainings and trainings that were more particular to our regional officers in addition to our delegates. In these trainings, more particularly, for the very first time, RADs were getting trainings that were not just under the scope of their job description when you look at them. For the very first time, we actually introduced to them 4 different new categories that they should be looking at. And if you were able to attend my workshop yesterday, anybody that did, there were 4 categories that we talked about, and I hope that you all remember them. But we were asking and tasking the RADs to look at engagement, participation, activation, recruitment, and retention efforts, which will kind of have a play into some numbers I'm going to throw at all of you later, so bear with me. Not only that, in that when they were looking at those new categories for the very first time, it opened up the room for them to look at new strategies of implementation that can be passed off to student body associations like all of you here. Additionally, we also introduced 2 statewide activation efforts, which are still in progress right now. So those of you who are student body presidents and student trustees, we are still looking to your help to help us in these 2 activation efforts. And one of them being that it helps the RADs in regional efforts. As the face of the region, it is very hard to recruit and retain individuals in their regions. So for those of you who are just coming and meeting with us for the very first time, thank you for being here and helping us in our efforts. While the second part of the activation works hand in hand with the first part is that it helps our caucuses and find individuals for our participatory governance committees. With the 2 working hand in hand, the board saw that these would be efforts to really not just help the RADs, but also help in the spaces where in the SSCCC there are some vacancies or blank spots. So that was something that the board the Regional Affairs Committee put forth in February, and the board passed in February, which is still an ongoing process. We gave ourselves 90 days to do so, and so far, it's looking pretty hot, and we've got a rollout of a few individuals who are participating in our activation efforts, but we're still always looking for more. Not only that, we are getting ready for our regional officer elections, which you'll all hear about tonight. So if you are interested in becoming a regional officer, please feel free to reach out to me or the regional affairs director of your respective region if your region has that. And last but not least, as President Chavez talked a little bit about, we released our advocacy toolkits, which were on a multitude of matters that were passed during the 25th annual General Assembly event. So during the delegate assemblies, each and every one of you got the opportunity to take a look at those and how they work. For the very first time, those advocacy toolkits included more than just 2 advocacy letter templates and a copy of the resolution. We included legal opinions from the Chancellor's office. We also included some stats and data sheets for you, in addition to any other materials that will help and assist you in truly advocating in our efforts in order to help you, help us in our efforts on advocating on the behalf of all students. Next part of it, as a whole within the SSCCC, next slide, please. Okay, cool. For the very first time, we have met our threshold. Our projected number was to at least meet 50% of activation efforts within the SSCCC out of our 116 colleges. I am proud to officially announce we have surpassed that. We are currently sitting at 85% as of right now, but our efforts are not done just yet. For the very first time also, we increased efforts within the 4 categories since being introduced to them in October. And those numbers are as follows. For engagement, we're at an all-time high of 75%, and our participation is at an all-time high of actually 80, almost 90%. I'm just waiting to round out that 1%. So these numbers are all rounded as well, everybody. For recruitment efforts, we are at a 45%, but seeing here today, those numbers actually might go up within the next 36 hours. So please help us. And then last but not least, which is the hardest category out of the 4, is our retention efforts, where we're currently sitting at 55%. Again, these numbers are rounded off. So if anybody's interested to see what my report looks like more in depth, it's a 3-pager. I'd be more than happy to provide that to you. Not only that, we visited 20 out of our 116 colleges. These were conducted in tandem with the Chancellor's office, as President Chavez has said, in addition to conducting our own. The ones that we conducted with the Chancellor's office, which I've had the pleasure of attending in addition to some of the RADs, were conducted from early October into late December. And last but not least, we introduced a very new college to our organization, and were recognized by the board of directors for the very first time. And that is none other than Calbright Community College, which is an entirely online college. And I am proud to finally say that they are actually in this region alone, my region, region 2, sorry. I gotta hype y'all up. And region 2 now oversees 14 colleges rather than the projected 13. And if you're interested about these regional numbers, I'll quickly go down them per region. But region 1 has 57%, meaning 4 out of 7 colleges. Region 2 has 86%, 12 out of 14 colleges. Region 3, 79 with 11 out of 14 colleges. Region 4 with 73%, 8 out of 11 colleges. 59% in region 5, 7 out of 12 colleges. Region 6 with for the very first time, a very high activation rate of 89%. That's 8 out of 9 colleges. And I just want to say shout out to Director Martinez, because that has been a struggle region. I am so glad to have that region, in addition to Director Villarreal of Region 5, have very high activation rates for those two regions for a very long time. So just had to give them a separate shout out for their efforts, because it has been a hard effort. And then for Region 7, we have 43% with 6 out of 14. Region 8 out of 13 colleges, 93. Region, I know that's a lot. And then Region 9, you have 92% with your 11 out of 12 colleges. And last but not least, in Region 10, our SoCal region, you have 89%, which means you have officially 8 out of 9 colleges. And last but not least, each of our regions saw a high spike in each of those categories from October all the way up until today. So please, as I look to all of you, please continue to assist and help us in our efforts as we continue to improve these numbers, as our job is not done yet. Don't give up on me, as I won't give up on you, because I have up until June 30th, until the next person takes on. Whoever the next VPRA is, I hope that you'll also be taking on these strategies as well. And you luckily won't have 90 days like I did. You'll have a full year to do so. But whoever the next VPRA is, I'm looking forward to helping you in your activation efforts and really ensuring that all 116 of our colleges within the 73 districts throughout the state of California are activated and actively participating, engaging, and recruiting, along with retaining those numbers going into this year, because it is a very new concept that's been introduced to the SSCCC. And with that being said, that concludes my part of it. I'll actually, I'll be passing over to my colleague and fellow regional officer within this region as well, VPLA Prasad.
Good morning. I almost said afternoon. I'm extremely tired, but so happy to finally see so many students in person. I know it's the first time many of you have been to a conference, so excited for you guys to be here today. So my name is Jasmine Prasad. I go to Folsom Lake College, and I'm currently the Vice President of Legislative Affairs. And some of the stuff we've been working on pertains to our priorities that are passed by you guys through resolutions. So whatever you pass this weekend will also be the priorities for the upcoming year and for the next VPLA to tackle. But some of our highest priorities that came from previous years, including last year, is student enfranchisement, basic needs, and Cal Grant reform. Cal Grant reform has been an ongoing issue, and I just want to throw out really quickly, if any of you guys want to make a video just in support of Cal Grant, please reach out to me, because we do have a couple budget hearings coming up, and we want to make sure we meet the full framework so it truly benefits community college students. And then moving on to some of our other statewide issues, I'll kind of go quickly because I don't have a lot of time. We're focusing on COVID-19 relief, so ensuring that students still have access to a lot of resources. I know many of you guys face broadband insecurities with technology infrastructure, and a lot of students lost their on-campus jobs, so we want to make sure they can accommodate to online aspects and ensure that students are still enrolling into community college, and we don't see the decreasement in enrollment that we are currently facing. We're also focusing on financial aid, so any aspect that pertains to making college more affordable for any student. We're also focusing on housing insecurity, food insecurity, and transportation. We are working on a couple housing bills this year. We're even sponsoring or co-sponsoring, which I'll get into later in the next slide. We're also advocating on OER textbook advocacy, so making sure that textbooks are more affordable for students, because I know I hate paying $200 for a textbook that just sits on my shelf collecting dust, and I know a lot of other students hate the same struggle. We're also advocating for menstrual equity. There was a bill that passed last year, however, we're still asking for more funding because they did have to gut and amend a lot of the bill just to implement one centralized location, but we want to make it to all of the bathrooms on the community college campuses, so pushing for more funding with that. Then we're also focusing on underrepresented students, so disabled student awareness, foster youth, and currently formerly incarcerated students, and undocumented, as well as veterans. So we are also sponsoring a bill that deals with disabled students, which again, I'll touch into later. Foster youth, we're co-sponsoring and ensuring that all of our underrepresented students are being highlighted, because during the pandemic, so many issues arise, and the legislature finally realized how much community colleges are struggling. It's unfortunate that we had to go through this unprecedented for them to realize it. But with that being said, our voice is stronger now more than ever, because we're finally advocating. We're getting so many students like you guys to advocate, show how important your voices are to the legislative level. Then moving on to student enfranchisement, we're working on nursing lottery, non-credit students, as well as board term limits. So just ensuring that students' voices are truly being heard and that over time, as new issues arise, our voices aren't being diminished and that administrations are truly paying attention to students and addressing the concerns that we have on campus. So it's easier for the next class to come in as we transfer or just get our certificate, whatever your goal is in your educational pathway. And then some other areas that we're continuing our advocacy is through mental health, unemployment, financial aid programs on the federal level, undocumented and international students. So mental health, as we all know, is a big priority for everyone, and we are working on a couple bills this year to ensure that our mental health needs are being addressed, as well as there's some funding last year in the governor's budget, but making sure that they truly tackle down on what the students need. And then to touch on March and March, I don't know if any of you guys attended. Hopefully you did. We had a pretty good turnout, more than last year, so I will take it. But I know a lot of students enjoyed lobbying and seeing some of the members speak about how important community college is and some of the work they're doing within the higher education committee. If you didn't get to attend, no worries. We did record it and it will be posted on YouTube later on throughout the year, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. And then again, financial aid. We're really working on Cal Grant to ensure that we meet the full framework because the governor did allocate some in the governor's budget last year. However, it does not truly benefit community college students, and we are the ones that need the money most compared to the UC and CSU system. Next slide, please. Oh, wrong slide. Okay, some of the bills that we are working on / sponsoring and co-sponsoring is SB 885 by Senator Laird. So that is the foster youth bill, which pertains to expanding the Next Up program on all community college campuses. So at the moment, there's about 46 campuses that have it, and so we're looking for $20 million ongoing funding to expand that across all of the colleges to ensure that foster youth students are having the resources they need to continue their education and not struggle, because a lot of underrepresented students are first-time generation college students, so we want to ensure that they can continue the pathway and not feel stressed out about all of the barriers they face within higher education. We're also focusing on AB 1736, which we are proud to sponsor, and that touches on non-credit and disabled student awareness. So that is amending the education code to allow disabled students and non-credit who don't meet the 5-unit requirement to still participate on their student body association or run for student trustee. Because many of us do not take credited classes. We might just want to obtain a certificate, or our disabilities prevent us from taking the 5-unit maximum. So we want to ensure that every voice is still being heard on their local governance level, because again, student advocacy is really important, and we want to make sure that every student is being represented and their concerns are being addressed. Then we're moving on to AB 1746, which deals with Cal Grant reform. So that is just making sure that we meet the full framework, which we entail to do, and truly making sure it focuses on community college this time, since we are underrepresented through the legislature quite frequently. But the pandemic is making our voice be heard. Then moving on to 2122, this also deals with mental health. So we are co-sponsors of this bill with Next Up. And what this bill essentially does is allow mental health hotlines on the front or back of student ID cards for the CSU, UC, and community college system. Just in case you're going through a mental health crisis, you can always call that number and have somebody to talk to if you're ever in need or really stressed out, because we know how stressful school can be sometimes. And then lastly, we have Senate Bill SB 886. So that one is dealing for housing and the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. So this is by Senator Scott Wiener, and what this bill does is it limits the litigation that colleges currently face. If any of you guys are planning to transfer to Berkeley, I'm sure you got that email saying they had to cut their enrollment, but legislation passed. They try to get it as soon as possible to cut that down and still let students attend. But with that being said, this bill does pertain to that, because a lot of colleges, even on their own land, there are neighboring communities that sue the administration just because they don't want more student housing to see more students in their local area. So it's really important that once they go through the first step, they do not face litigation issue, because if it is the college's land, they should be able to build student and faculty housing to truly benefit our students and make it more affordable for everyone. And I do want to note there are a couple more legislations that we are supporting. So again, housing for both students and faculty, sexual misconduct transparency across the community college, UC, and CSU system, mental health, college affordability, equity amongst all the students, and many more to come as the LAC committee takes more stances. If you have any specific questions about bills that we are currently looking at or in support of, feel free to reach out to me. Just find me wherever, and if there's any bills that you would like SSCCC to take a look at, feel free to reach out to me as well, and I will be sure to make the LAC take a look and take a stance. With that being said, thank you, and I will now be passing it off to the VPF.
Hi everyone, my name is Fiza Sayed. I'm a student at De Anza College and I serve as the Vice President of Finance for the SSCCC. Since the SSCCC works with student funds, we believe it's really important that we are transparent with our students and showing how we are spending that funding. So for the purposes of accountability and transparency, I'll be giving a finance update for 2021-2022. So in terms of revenue, our biggest source of revenue is the student representation fee, which is $917,868. We also estimated our events revenue to be $250,000. We've worked with the organization and received grants for up to $140,000. We also conducted our first fundraiser for students affected by police brutality, and that brought in $500. So in total, we budgeted for $1.2 million. So moving on to a few budget highlights. So we're really proud of the fact that 75% of our funds are spent on students. So this includes conducting college visits, trainings, presentations, and events such as General Assembly, professional development, and other trainings. That also includes resolution implementation, which is a big part of what we do at the SSCCC. As well as region meetings, travel, and regional trainings. We also give out stipends to our board of directors, but as VP Campos mentioned, this is the first year that we are providing stipends for regional officers, but also for students participating in shared governance groups at the statewide level. The rest of the 25% of funds are spent on operations, so funding our staff and facilities, and any other resources that help operate and support the work that SSCCC does. So talking about the next slide, please. A few ongoing and future projects. So we continue to review and develop financial policies. This year we've updated our regional financial policy, our regional fundraising policy, and introduced a reserve policy. The SSCCC is also looking into making investments, so we will be working with an investment management firm that will help manage our funds. We're also assisting regions in developing their budget for the next year and also host potential fundraisers. Along the same lines, the SSCCC is also working on developing their statewide budget for 2022 and 2023. And lastly, we're finalizing our scholarships, so that's introducing a process, a rubric, and a policy. I also wanted to mention that an audit was conducted this year, and that demonstrated that the SSCCC financial position is stable and we're in good standing. The current audit is uploaded on the SSCCC website if you would like to have a look. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much, and I'll be passing it over to VPC.
All right, hello everyone. Okay, let me set this mic up. Okay, I might have to bend over. Okay, so hello everyone, my name is Jessica Dominguez. I am the Vice President of Communications for the SSCCC. So this year, a little bit of background, I originally started off the year as a Regional Affairs Director for Region 9, and then was later appointed actually this January to the executive position of VPC. So I want to give a shout out to our former VPC, Angelica Campos, who really led a lot of the efforts this year. Who really led a lot of the communications efforts this year, so shout out Angie. So this year, the SSCCC began the process of rebranding the organization. A little background, we wanted to create branding that set us apart. Most companies you look at have colors, fonts, and logos. Like think of Target with red or Walmart with light blue. You immediately recognize them. And if you look at our system partners like the Faculty Association, Academic Senate, and even Chancellor's Office, they all have recognizable branding schemes. So even our sister organizations like UCSA and CCSA, which are the student senates for the UC and CSUs, they all have recognizable branding. So this branding initiative came out of the necessity to be recognizable to our students, and it is absolutely essential for us to be recognizable so that we can garner student participation, because if we don't have students, we don't have anything. And as VPRA Galanado likes to say, we are an organization for students by students. And you can see these branding efforts in real time on our Instagram and Twitter page at SSCCC Official. Shameless plug. This year we also pushed several social media campaigns to highlight our diverse student populations, such as our celebratory months we featured on Instagram through Zoom panels and our IG Lives. This year we successfully celebrated Native American Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, LGBTQ+ History Month, Black History Month, and just this past month we celebrated Women's History Month with an amazing panel with our lovely LACCD student trustee, Karaima Martinez. Woo! Dr. Navarrete from the Chancellor's Office, and also Dr. Awan from LA Southwest College. And through these social media campaigns, we have really been able to display resources for our students and just honor our diverse student population. This past year, we've also expanded the role of both VPC and the comms officer. At this past January Board of Directors meeting, the Board of Directors approved revisions to the job description of the VPC. So the newly approved description really transformed the role of VPC, and that the role is no longer just the chair of a communications committee or being generally responsible for communication with the regions, but instead made the role very collaborative, because when you think about it, if we do not have strong communication between the regions, in the regions, from the statewide level to the local level, nothing gets done, and a gap between the SSCCC and students begins to grow, which defeats the purpose of our entire organization. So thank you guys so much for your time.
All right, if you could go to the last slide, that'd be great. All right, I just want to thank all of you and all of my colleagues, all of my colleagues for the hard work that you all put in. But that wouldn't be done if there weren't students to do it for. Not to do it for us, oh my gosh, but students to inspire us to do the work that we do. I just wanted to highlight, again, if any of you want to contact us, get an idea of more on how you can get involved, what we do, if you want to collaborate on maybe any of the upcoming projects we have ongoing, I welcome you to look at write down all of our contact info. I'm going to work to get a copy of this PowerPoint in the activity feed, a link to it, if you all want to see, have something to take back to your SBAs when you leave GA. Other than that, make sure to follow us on Instagram. That's where you can see all of those amazing discussions, those amazing panels that we just mentioned are at. So that it's the Twitter handle and Instagram handle at SSCCC_official.